Hey everyone, welcome and welcome back. We had a really great session this afternoon with the Center for Artistic Activism, and we are focusing this week at the next Festival of Emerging Artists on social justice and activism. And I think it's just amazing the different viewpoints that we've had on how art can help make the world a better place and all of the different ways that that can happen. So, if you don't know the festival, this is the next Festival of Emerging Artists. I started it in 2013 as a way to help young artists at the beginning of their careers find all of the different pieces of the puzzle to put together a career in a changing landscape. And so when the pandemic hit, I started doing twice weekly broadcasts and master classes and workshops to try and help all of the artists who were out of work, all of the young artists who were all of a sudden stuck at home with nothing to practice for, trying to provide information and inspiration and a sense of community. And a lot of the larger organizations were just sort of running for cover, and I felt like young artists were being kind of left behind in that process. So we had an amazing festival last year with 35 guest artists. We're halfway through our festival this year. We have 2 more weeks to come. I invite you to join us for the final 2 weeks. Next week, we're focusing on musicality and artistry. And the final week, we're doing a big push on multidisciplinary collaboration. And one of the things that I think is really interesting is trying to find all of the pieces of the puzzle that make up an artist. So an artist is not just somebody who dances or makes music, it's a whole human being. And the panelists that we have tonight, I'm really excited about them because they're just fantastic people with a passion for making the world a better place, but also incredible, incredible artists and dear friends of mine as well. So I wanted to just start a discussion with all of us tonight. You know, a lot of the fellows who are here really feel something bigger than just showing up on stage and playing the notes that are on a page. They want to make a difference in the world. They want to make their own way. We've seen already in the festival that the old ways of doing things are more difficult, if not impossible, and kind of gone by the wayside. What are the new ways that we can exist as human beings and as artists with those things in harmony and to leave things better than how we found them? And so the three panelists that we have tonight, Ashleigh Gordon, co-founder of Castle of Our Skins, Donna Friedman, who started her story, her music, her story, and Silver Linings, Heritage and Harmony, and also Kelly Hall-Tompkins, Music Kitchen, Food for the Soul. They have really incredible journeys as artists, but also as activists using art to create change. And I think that's really the definition of activism. So I just wanted to start with each one of them telling you a little bit about their story as an artist, their story as an entrepreneur, as somebody who's making an organization that to make the world a better place. And let's start with you, Kelly. You've been a longtime friend of the festival and done master classes for us, and also were part of our season finale last year. I've always admired your playing and the passion with which you started Music Kitchen. So could you talk a little bit about your personal journey as an artist and as an organizer, an administrator, an activist, and just great person?
Sure. Thank you so much, Peter. It's really great to be here, and it's great to see so many of you that I've seen over the last year. Peter, we go way back to the start of the pandemic, which at this
It
point
feels
does
like
seem
25 years now.
it's like 25 years ago. But it's nice to see many of you back for the Next Fest panel. And yes, I'm happy to tell you a bit about my career and how I started Music Kitchen Food for the Soul. So I'm a violin soloist, and I think that that's been a unique transition to that career for me. I started out with a focus in orchestral playing. In fact, I did a degree at the Manhattan School of Music in orchestral, the master's in orchestral performance, and I thought that was the career I wanted. I was runner-up at the New York Philharmonic, and I studied with the former concertmaster of the New York Philharmonic, Glenn Dick Giroux, and I was really headed in that direction. And I had an orchestra job for a number of years, and I loved it. But at the same time, as Peter mentioned, I felt like I wanted to have a deeper impact in the world. I felt like I wanted my personal voice to have a deeper impact in the field. So I started to really, well, I guess I should say I continued to explore those avenues, but I started to really imagine them as a way for me to do those things separate from a large entity. I used to think that a career could only be made through the lens of an entity, but by eventually leaving an orchestra and pursuing my solo career, and before that, starting my own organization, I created the entity that has made a really deep impact in the world. So in 2004, I was preparing for some solo concerts, and I usually like to run through my repertoire for people. Um, but at the time, there was a lot going on in my life, and I didn't really have time to coordinate with colleagues. And when I did, that they were finally coordinate with them, they were booked. So I was already a volunteer cook in our church shelter, and I decided at the last minute to just play for them. I was feeling terribly guilty about that because I thought, who but professional musicians could stand to hear a violin concerto without accompaniment? But I went to play for them, and they just loved it. And they asked me if I would come back the next night. And I said, well, sure, but I'm gonna, it was like a couple days away from leaving for this concerto. I was like, I'm gonna play the same music. And they said, that's okay. We totally love it. So I came back, and we the next night, and we had this incredibly strong connection between us. And already my wheels were turning. And I was thinking, I need to create a program for this, and not solo music, but high level chamber music. I knew I'm such a passionate chamber music player, and I knew that chamber music is the music of community. It's a powerful medium. It's got immediacy, and so I set out to create an organization that I called Music Kitchen Food for the Soul. We were the pioneer organization in that space, and we still occupy a unique space in that we bring top artists in concert in homeless shelters. So since 2005, we've presented over 200 top artists, including people like Emmanuel Axe and Glenn Dictorow, the principal oboist of the Berlin Philharmonic, many, many wonderful emerging artists, members of the New York Philharmonic, but a lot of emerging artists like Terrence Wilson and Alexis Gerloff, really artists that are at the top of their field. And we've reached an estimated 30,000 shelter clients. And it's been an incredible journey. The thing that keeps me going, I think, is in the beginning, I used to think, this is the concert. Maybe we just got lucky. This is the concert. They're not going to like it. And it just never happens. The music has such an incredibly powerful impact that even I continue to be surprised and inspired and moved by what I see. There's one young woman that I still am in touch with. She's no longer homeless. And I remember she said, I am forever changed because you are here today. And I will never forget this day. I mean, those are the words that I carry around with me. It was to a very specific project that she said that regarding, she said that statement. And I'd love to share with you a little bit about that. So, um, I had the idea from the very beginning of Music Kitchen to solicit free form feedback from the listeners. I had no designs on what that was going to be for, except for that I really wanted to know myself, the deep innermost feelings of the clients that we were playing for. Sometimes they shared them with us verbally. Sometimes they said nothing. But you'd go home and you'd read these words, and you're just blown away by the impact that the music and the artistry had. So I've collected these over 15 years, hundreds of sentiments and surprising things, funny drawings, heartfelt sentiments. So to celebrate Music Kitchen's 15th anniversary, I decided I had a great idea of what to do with those heartfelt sentiments. I decided to invite 15 top composers now to select among that feedback and create a composite song cycle called Forgotten Voices. So we have an incredibly inspiring list of 15 composers, including many, many prize winners, including 3 Pulitzer Prize winners and Rome and Guggenheim Prize winners, and emerging artists as well. Very, very diverse range of composers. And we set out to premiere one new song every month in a shelter. Fortunately, I thought to do that starting in January of 2019. So we got through nearly all 15. We got through 14 of the shelter premieres. It was a firm priority of mine to prioritize the shelter clients for these, to bring it to the public second and the shelter clients first. Similarly to what some of my friends sometimes want to go and hear Emmanuel Ax when we have him playing with us. And I find it, we are the one that started shifting the paradigm in classical music industry, where you now have to go to a homeless shelter to hear a world-class performance. We really opened the space for that. And so we premiered the songs one per month in the shelter, and we have another thing that's really, really exciting is a partnership with Carnegie Hall, or what I like to call the People's House, to do the world premiere of the full song cycle. We were to have done that in May of 2020, but of course we all know what happened. I'm happy to report that it was that's been rescheduled, and we are in partnership with Carnegie Hall to present the world premiere next March 31st. So it's a really exciting new chapter for Music Kitchen. The idea is to make forgotten voices heard. And I think it's also an exciting chapter to bring more to the public the work that we've been doing over 15 years, because Music Kitchen has existed to bring top artists that perform all over the world, but behind closed doors in a shelter. So now we are showing the value of the respect and the value of the respect of the art of the clients that we play for by the quality of the artistry in this project, and now bringing it to the public. So it's a really, really exciting time for Music Kitchen, and without calling it a diversity project, because I don't need to do that. I did set out to have a very representative composers. So in no other project, without really talking a lot about it, we have numerous women composers who are women, composers who are African American, composers who are Asian, composers who are Latino in that group. It is as diverse as those experiencing homelessness can be. So it's something that means a lot to me. Many of the artists that perform with Music Kitchen say that they're even more moved to play for that audience than for the public. And so it's a deeply meaningful project that has been with me since before my career had strong legs, and it will go with me. It's a very pivotal part of who I am. And I see we have one of our board members here too. Anyway, I will pass the baton. Thank you very much. Thanks for your interest.
I just think that's amazing. So our next panelist is Ashleigh Gordon, who was co-founder of Castle of Our Skins. We had an amazing session with her the other day, and she's been so generous with her time. One of the things that we're trying to do is hook up our young artists with mentors and different people that they can talk to kind of seek guidance for different projects that they have, or just to kind of find out who they are as an artist and what kind of path they want to make for themselves. So Ashleigh, it's great to see you, and we'd love to hear about your journey as an artist and founder of Castle of Our Skins.
Sure, thanks. And thank you, Kelly, for sharing so much history and backstory and passion with what you do. It's one thing to read about it on a website and sort of hear anecdotally, and certainly another to hear from your own lips. So I appreciated your sharing and your story. And with the fellows here, I know we chatted a little bit about my journey, my development, and more so my mindset, which is really the impetus, the center of anything that you see sort of externally, and that mindset being one to foster cultural curiosity, to really live with authenticity, to try to merge energies and interests, so to not be here in one space and then sort of don a different hat in another space, but really try to think holistically about yourself. And as I shared, certainly for me, knowing that I have an interest in creating things, and from a very, very early age, whether that was creating children's stories and illustrating children's stories, creating opportunities, projects, creating spaces for environmentalism in high school as president of the recycling club, creating masterclass opportunities in college, etc. I had a sort of business savvy sense, and very much wanted to test my own capabilities of trying to understand how things can work and how I can make things work. So recognizing that as being in conflict with perhaps sitting in an ensemble, sitting in an orchestra, and maybe not being able to engage fully with a creative side, with an entrepreneurial side, having a little bit of autonomy, seeing pieces come from idea to fruition, didn't sit with me, although I was told it should, or I should have a sort of a certain trajectory, which would be to be in an orchestra. I went to New England Conservatory and definitely had excerpt classes, and definitely had in a sea of amazing violists high priority to have a certain kind of trajectory that really didn't fundamentally sit with the type of personality that I know I am. Also really engaged, as I shared before, with one-on-one situations where I can have intimate connections, deep connections. So very, very much in line with Kelly, and thinking with chamber music, there's so much play and space and flexibility and wonderment that can really be explored and helped shaped in such an intimate way that gets lost sometimes in other spaces and other sort of formats. And wanted to really recognize that this is a space that felt comfortable, and more than felt comfortable, felt amplifying for my own personalities again. Research is something that I'm really interested in, as I shared before. So wanting to, for instance, in my master's with studying for viola performance, getting my degree in viola performance, didn't have a Black student union, but had a few Black students to find fellowship with, one of which is Anthony R. Green, co-founder of Castle of Our Skins. Pianist, composer, both interested in new music, so wanting to find an opportunity to connect with each other, support each other, play together. In our own naivety, some to our sort of fault, and certainly to the fault of education, we didn't have access and knowledge to the vast history of Black contribution as it relates to this field that we call Western classical music or art music or concert stage music. And with our multiple degrees, could only name on one hand Black composers without even using all of the fingers. So activating our research side, wanting to explore our own kind of curiosity, took to heart what we could do, took to heart what was available to us in our own libraries, our public libraries, school libraries, on the internet, talking, putting that out into the universe, see what is sort of spit back, I don't know what the past tense of that is, what returns back to you, and quickly realize that there is a whole world sort of going on an archaeological dig, very much beneath the surface, not even hidden, buried, feet below the surface, but just inches below the surface, this entire rich world of Black artistry as it relates again to this genre. So really wanting to selfishly sort of explore our own curiosity as it relates to African diasporic composers, and quickly realizing that other people are also curious about this. I am in Boston, and Castle of Our Skins is here with me in Boston. Boston is an incredibly rich artistic city. We have a highly transient community in the sense that there's a lot of students that come through. So New England Conservatory being one, Berkeley, Boston College of Music, Longy, Boston University, and Harvard, and a ton of other schools. The average age, I think, in Boston is something like 24, 25, because there's, again, such an influx of students. That said, the influx of students like Coretta Scott King and Florence Price and Maude Cooney Hare, who lived, in my neighborhood of Jamaica Plain, are not names, African American, are not names that are also on our concert hall stages, or in next to the bust of Beethoven that is in New England Conservatory, if anyone has ever gone through those halls. So we recognize that there is, as rich an artistic city as Boston, a void in the narrative of the arts sector here, of who has contributed, who has benefited, and who has influenced the arts and culture scene, knowing especially that we have such a wide export of arts and culture on this East Coast it is really incumbent upon us to really make sure that we have space for that. So Castle of Our Skins is a concert and educational series, and really fundamentally everything that we do is educational. It doesn't matter if the music is written today, if the music was written centuries ago, it really is something to be treated as new music in the sense that it needs a context. And it needs that kind of care and that kind of shape to be able to find that connective point, because it may be history, it may be a name, it may be a certain style, it may be a certain reference to a particular period of time that is new and requires that kind of care and contextualization. So we take that very much to heart in concert spaces, in classrooms, to really use education as a tool and use music as a means to inspiring people to learn along with us. Some of the things that we have done over our 8 years are certainly traditional concerts, as you may think, with a whole variety of chamber music, preferencing piano, strings, and voice. In addition to that, since there is such a natural connection in expressivity, especially in Black expressivity, with movement, with music, with storytelling, to have spoken word, to have dance, to have music. So we are very much open and excited about interdisciplinary collaborations, so much so that we launched also during the pandemic a creative in residence position, and specifically morphed what was very, from early days, a composer in residence, and giving certain prompts around different figures in Black history, writing something around Black visual art, for instance, and really wanting now to expand it to a creative in residence. So we had a phenomenal Zimbabwe scholar, educator, Nimbirist, healer as our inaugural creative in residence. And I will give you totally private. I know this is being recorded. Don't say anything because we have to make a public announcement on Saturday, Juneteenth, but we'll have a poet for our next creative in residence and have a lot of ideas around how we can collaborate and connect, and really do want to stay in that vein of interdisciplinary strength. There's a saying of Ubuntu, I am because you are. We have collective work responsibility. We are stronger, certainly together. And in artistic sphere, we recognize that I can learn from you, you can learn from me. I influence the ecosystem, the artistic ecosystem that you benefit from, and vice versa. So let's work together. Some other sort of collaborative at heart projects that we've done. Our Black Composer Miniature Challenge, of which Jay, I know, has submitted a 30-second miniature that happened during the pandemic. We have a second one this year for African diaspora composers to write 30-second miniatures for flute and harp. We may do a Black Poet Miniature Challenge, since we have a poet in residence, to write 30-second poems or haikus, and also present a whole wide, vast array of artistry as it relates to African diasporic expression. We have done some collaborations with Seth Parker Woods, who I know has come to, I think, once or twice over the past week and a half here. Seth Parker Woods, obviously an amazing cellist. We did a project with him. Julius Eastman scholar, we did a project with 10 cellos, His Holy Presence from Joan of Arc, and gave what was a revised sort of vision for this piece, which is to have it be a choreographed piece. So we brought dance, and that hadn't happened in its entirety since 1988, I think, in the late 1980s. Other collaborations that we've done have involved working with contemporary dancers, working with crump dancers, working with textile artists, working with visual artists and capoeistas, capoeira, spinning on their head types of things, and really just seeing that there is no framework that is boxing us in, and we are ultimately creating the sort of garden in the shape of the garden that we would like to cultivate. So the nature of what we do, exploring African diasporic compositions, of which it is hugely vast if you think about 500 years worth in multiple continents, hugely vast to be able to use as fodder for reimagined narratives as it relates to classical music.
the way that it just comes from who you are. Like when we talk about uniting and who you are as an artist and who you are as a person, and not feeling like you have to bifurcate and be different people, and just following that curiosity and doing that research, that's super inspiring. Let's turn to Donna Weng Friedman, who is also an old friend, even though it just feels like it wasn't that long ago, but it feels like millennia that we've known each other. And you've done a couple really inspiring projects, Her Music, Her Story, and then also now 2 years of Heritage and Harmony. So talk to us about that journey, Donna.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Thank you for having me. And thank you, Ashleigh and Kelly. I just really enjoyed hearing your stories and all the incredible work that the two of you have been doing and continue to do. And to the fellows, I have to say I applaud all of you because what you are doing, what your thirst, your hunger to have your passion in music serve a better purpose, I did not come to that until much later as an adult. I feel that when I was your age, I was a little more self-serving. I love performing, and performing was everything to me. I'm a pianist, and I basically did, I followed that track without thinking about how music could, serve a better purpose. So, I do applaud all of you in that way. I think social media has a lot to do with it, and all of the, the virtual world has, brought us all closer together. But I wish that I had found that path earlier. When I was younger, as a pianist, I think, I agree with Kelly and Ashleigh. Chamber music is wonderful because you have a community. But I was doing a lot of solo performing, and it got pretty lonely. And I never liked traveling by myself from hotel to backstage by myself at all. So I actually took a couple of years off, actually more than a couple of years off, to try to figure out what it was I wanted to do. I booked rock bands for a year. I sold New York real estate. I had a New York real estate license. I never sold a single apartment. Anyway, so I've been through all of this stuff. Music has always been my passion and my inspiration, and I've always come back to it. But I really needed to find a more creative way. I'm not a composer. I can't compose. I'm lousy at it. I'm a plagiarist. But I have a true creative spirit. And I did find that years later by creating programs. And I think what it is ultimately is that I'm a very emotional person. Emotional with my music, and emotional when it comes to hearing about things that are happening in the world that I don't think should happen. I guess justice, what's right in the world. And I think the first time was in the 2008, 2009, 2010, when New York City Public Schools stopped having music. When they cut back on the music classes, that hurt me. I had two little kids. They had music, surrounded by music. All, everywhere they went, they heard music, any kind of music. I love all kinds of music. But music classes, art classes were being cut back, and I wanted to do something in my own small way to help schools, inner city schools, charter schools, and bring some music in. So I created interactive classical music apps for children. It took me 2 years. I learned how to develop the apps. I did a lot of research. And what I decided to do was, classical music always has this thing that people think it's, you have to learn it for years to appreciate it. It's, elitist. It's, difficult to understand. And I think it's just a different way of telling stories. And who doesn't love stories? What child doesn't love a story? So I wrote stories to go with famous pieces of classical music. And the purpose, and I animated it, And the purpose was to teach children how to listen for the inherent narrative in classical music. And my wonderful friends and colleagues, Carter Bray, the principal cellist of New York Philharmonic, Liz Mann, flutist, and David Frost, 19-time Grammy Award winner, they were so for this project. So they joined me. And we, recorded, I had it animated, and I made these apps. And at that time, I was so naive. I didn't know about funding. I didn't know about grants, so I funded everything myself. And it was a very expensive, venture, but I thought it was worth it. And then the time came, and I said, what do I do with these apps? And they were on, iTunes, but that's not what I wanted. So I went like a door-to-door salesman. I took my apps and my iPad from school to school by myself. I went to lower schools, middle schools, charter schools, inner city schools, and I did free workshops for the kids. Plugged in the iPad to the smart boards, and I felt like the way Kelly said how she felt. When I saw and heard the response from these children, every single penny, it was so worthwhile. When the kids were so excited when they heard Flight of the Bumblebee, when they heard The Swan, and they understood the stories, when they started making up their own stories, it was the greatest gift of a lifetime for me. And it turns out that some of the teachers, the writing teachers, they used my apps to teach how to construct a story. Because, with the stories that I wrote, I had the stories with music, the music alone, the music with animation, in all different, ways so that they can experience the music. And they started writing stories, and they started sending me their stories. So that was my first feeling that that I could effectuate change through music, and it was a gift. So after that, I'm a teacher, and I continued performing and teaching, and then. I guess her music story came about, again, very simply. I'm not a very complicated person. I was having lunch with a friend, Alison Charney, who became my co-creator and co-host for her music story. And I just was telling her about my obsession with Clara Schumann. And this was before Clara Schumann's celebration of her 200th. And I was talking about how, nobody knows of her music. Very few people know about her music, but they all talk about how she was the muse of Robert Schumann and Johannes Brahms, and how she was a great pianist, but, her music was great. So Alison and I started talking, and we started talking about Amy Beach and Cecile Chaminade. We started, looking through all these incredible women composers, their music, and their stories, which some of the stories, are what movies are made of. And we decided to start this series. And we launched Her Music, Her Story at Princeton University at She Roars, this international, incredible convention conference that celebrates women. And that was our first concert there. And we were very nervous about it, and we were just amazed by the response for this format, which was we tell the stories and share the music. We also commissioned a song cycle called the Clara Cycle, dedicated to Clara Schumann, and the music was composed by Kim D. Sherman, and the poems by my colleague and dear friend Royce Flippen. And we invited Kelly, and Alison and I, it was composed for soprano, violin, and piano. Also a combination that's not, really, there's not a lot of repertoire out there. And it was wonderful. The collaboration was a dream. And we performed it at Steinway Hall. And, we started doing the concerts. And then I said to Alison, I said, you know what? I think this would be a great radio show. Because what it is, it's about listening. And I love radio because of that. We are so inundated with a lot of visual stuff. And now after a year and a half of Zoom, we need to sometimes give our eyes a rest. But the listening aspect is so powerful and so important. So we were very lucky. You know, we approached. I knew somebody who was on the board, and she passed on my proposal. We met with the WQXR folks, and they loved the idea. And so we had a mini-series where Allison and I were co-hosts. And, you know, that I thought was wonderful because, you know, history has all these gaps, and the gaps need to be filled with extraordinary women. So I felt, you know, that was a lovely way of doing it. I'm not a combative person. I don't, you know, as Peter and I were talking about activism, you know, I'm not, you know, being tied against a tree and, you know, screaming for my, you know, what I believe in. But I just love doing things through stories and music. And I think stories and music together, they unite people. So then the pandemic came, and everything shut down, and WQXR shut down. Our concerts were canceled, and things took a turn, you know. And last March, while I was walking my dog in Central Park, I was assaulted for being Asian. I wasn't hurt physically, but a very large man, you know, came barreling towards me and screamed every anti-Asian slur he could think of. And then he ended it by threatening me and saying ordering me to go back to China or get what you deserve. And, you know, up until then, I'd led a very smooth sailing life. I've never felt discriminated against, you know, and this really shook me up because this was just a few blocks from home. And I stopped feeling safe, and I literally did not leave my apartment for 6 months after that. I think the sheltering at home started a couple of weeks after the incident happened. But I could not even walk my dog. My husband did all of that. I was so scared. But I didn't like the way this made me feel. And then being at home, what do? So you listen to the news, and then I started hearing more and more horror stories, hate crimes against the Asian American community, you know, and much worse, you know, violence. And you know, I realized that I needed to do something, again, in my own small way. I was very emotional, and again, my emotions lead me to my next adventure. And so that's when I created Heritage and Harmony in collaboration with WQXR. And see, my feeling was these hate crimes, what happened to me and what happens to so many people, I think these hate crimes, they stem from ignorance and fear of the unknown. A lot of them do, and I think over the pandemic, that fear of this unknown virus coming from China, this deadly, deadly virus, all the stories that we were hearing, especially in the beginning, that fear was coming from a single story. And while during this pandemic, I listened to a lot of TED Talks, and one of my favorite TED Talks was given by author Chimamanda Adichie. And her TED Talk, called The Danger of a Single Story, resonated with me during this time. And she said, the single story creates stereotypes. And the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story. And that's when I had my aha moment, and I spoke to the producers at QXR, and I said, I need to make a program sharing the stories and music of classical musicians of Asian descent, because I truly believe that the more people get to know who we are, the more they hear our stories, the more they'll realize, you know, we're not that different. We're more the same than we are different. And then hopefully some of the ugliness and some of that need to blame us for something that we had nothing to do with may go away. So that was when I created the video series in collaboration with Heritage and Harmony with WQXR. So the year went by and so much went on. So many of our colleagues and friends, out of jobs and getting sick, and in December, my entire family came down with COVID. So it was like bookending it, first starting with the assault and then ending 2020, another bang with COVID. And then I realized, looking back, that what got me through that year was music. Music has the power to heal. So I decided to produce my pandemic EP with 4 pieces by Asian American composers and African American composers, performed exclusively by Asian American musicians. And each piece on this EP really helped get me through this ridiculous year. And I really felt strongly that, this was, of course, my response to the ongoing violence against the AAPI community. But I wanted, to bring people together in some way, and for those people who may have wanted to help the AAPI community and not know how, I had all the proceeds donated to the Korean American Foundation, that's an organization that fights racism on all levels, not just for the Asian American community, but for all ethnicities. So all of the proceeds go to this organization, and the album is called Heritage and Harmony, Silver Linings, because through all of this year, through the horrors and the sadness, I did find silver linings. And the silver linings, happened to be connecting with so many people like all of you, having music, and continuing together, lifting each other up through the power of music. So, that was my journey over the last year. And now, I'm circling back to education, because I think that, in order for us to really effectuate change, the kind of change for the future, we have to start with our children. We need to educate them to be respectful, and we need to fill in those gaps and let them experience extraordinary women, of all ethnicities, so that, our girls will grow up knowing what they can achieve, and our boys will grow up respecting women and what they can achieve. So I am now working on 2 Heritage and Harmony education projects in collaboration with the National Women's History Museum that will launch next spring. And so, the work continues, but it's all wonderful because it's based on my passion and what inspires me most, music.
Yeah, thank you, Donna. Creativity can take different routes. We think just of creativity as playing our instruments, but Kelly and Ash, you were talking about programming as a creative process and creating an organization as a creative process. And Donna, you saying that you're not a composer, but creating something. Show us different ways that we can find our way through and kind of find who we are as artists. Yeah, so feel free to turn on your cameras or raise your hands or put anything in the chat.
I think one thing I would say to the fellows, as you're preparing your your paths and your careers, what I feel like we're all saying is there's some degree of living your passion that is a kind of 3-dimensional chess. Spoken by somebody who doesn't play chess, but what I imagine to be three-dimensional chess in the sense of um, you you take the training that you had and the path that you thought you were on, and maybe that's the path you stay on. But you combine that with the passions that you have for making music and creating, with the the gaps in history, as has been mentioned, that you see, and filling those in unique ways. And um, I think it can be surprising what you can do, um, when you combine those things in the path that it leads you on. I think it is a creative process, every aspect of it: programming, deciding what artists to engage, or what people, or organizations to partner with, what need in the world to fill. All of that is a sort of a three dimensional application of what we studied in a more linear, staid fashion in school and university and conservatories. But how it gets applied in the world is dynamic and ever changing, and multifaceted, three-dimensional, and it's really exciting. And it's the lens through you're the lens through which all of that is possible. Every one of us that has spoke has, created something through our unique lens, of perception in the world. So anyway, I'd love to answer questions. Love to see faces too, but that's okay. Questions?
I just had one other thing to add, and then also would love to see some faces again and hear your voices again. It was so lovely to engage with you all last week when we had some more one-on-one time. What I especially love about our different stories that we shared is the sort of journeying, the singularity of what that may look like, and the multiplicity of what that may look like. So a journey could be 15 years, for instance, crafting an organization, 8 years for me, crafting an organization, or it could be in 2 years having five journeys. I lost count with Donna, right? So there's no, it's an authentic journey if it's led with authenticity. And that may mean that you are headed in this direction. It may mean that you take a detour and then all eggs in the basket and just move forward. It may mean that your road got that much bigger because you've now combined those different journeys, that kind of thing. And that's the excitement behind it. A personal mentor of mine has expressed to me the driving along, the West Coast. If you've ever taken, I haven't done this, but there's a route 66 route, highway 1, there you go, highway 1, and you can drive you could just the entire coast if you want, or you can stop and explore here and go off and come back. Maybe you never come back to it because you get so caught up in who knows what, and that's beautiful. That's amazing. That is authentically you, and it's also inspiring to hear through and feel through the Zoom boxes each one of our excitements for the work that we're doing, even though they have completely different visual manifestations. So it could be an aspen, tall tree, here's a direction and things are really emanating from this direction, or a willow tree that is just encasing so many different projects and avenues and things like this, and all are just incredibly beautiful. So that is my sort of reflection and how I encapsulate so much about what was shared tonight.
I'd like to add also, and I agree 100%, Ashleigh, with what you said about journeys. And part of the journey is never stop learning. And what's so exciting about this time, and it is exciting, we have, new territory with technology and the way the world is so much smaller. It's really, I think the world is your oyster. I think there are going to be things in the next 5-10 years that haven't been invented yet that you are going to be able to apply to your art, to your passion. When I discovered the iPad and the app, that was like, whoa. I'll tell you that actually the beginning of that story was I was creating stories to music for a children's book in cassette. and that was the beginning of what I thought was going to be, a Barnes and Noble's thing. And it turns out Starbucks back then, I don't know if anybody remembers this, they had an entertainment division. And the president of Starbucks loved my idea, and they were going to publish everything until they collapsed. And they completely canceled. So you don't know what's going to happen. The publishing, their entertainment business folded. Luckily, Starbucks still, is doing great. And my husband said to me, who is, a mathematician, he said, you don't want to be in the bin at Barnes and Noble's for 99 cents where it's going to collect dust. And then he just said to me, there's this new thing called the app. And so I took 2 years to learn about it. And now look what's happening with apps everywhere. So just keep an open mind and keep learning. And it's, I am not a tech person at all. I don't even know how to send a Zoom link to people. But I learned about app development, So just always learn and look and read and read and read, about technology, because it is a new frontier. It's going to continue to astound us and take classical music and the music and the art that we love so much, further into the future. And I think that this is the way that we can really connect with people all over the world. So that's just my 2 cents worth.
And one of the things that I also get from our discussion is, that often we talk about, your parents will say, make sure you have a backup plan, or, make sure that what happens if music doesn't work out, and we think, oh, we have to prepare for that. But all of these things that you're doing, which are not, standing on a stage and making music, they're part of what make you, really tick and really fulfilled as artists and human beings. It's not a distraction from that. It's the two feed off of each other. So I think that that's just really, you're really all living fuller lives through being kind of expressing your full personality and humanity and curiosity through all of those things, which I think is just important to think about. They're not mutually exclusive. In fact, to live a full life as an artist, a lot of people could benefit by having everything brought together.
And to live a full life as an artist means that you have to feel pain and you have to feel disappointment, and you're not going to do everything the way you want to, and but you have to just pick yourself up. I think resilience is important. As I said, I failed at several careers, real estate and such, but it just will make your resolve stronger to what you love, and it'll bring you home, and it'll always keep you, motivated. If you love what you do, if you have that passion, you will be motivated throughout your life to find, and it's not, as Ashleigh said, I found my way in so many directions, and it's all part and parcel of the same package. It's all of who I am, but I just, I found different ways of expressing, my love. Yeah.
I think that's what I would say too. I refuse to entertain the concept of a backup plan, because to me that puts a time limit. I have friends in school, as my mom, who's incredibly supportive, was getting to know what this scary thing called a music career was going to be like, she would say things about a backup plan. I refused to ever entertain that notion, knock on wood. I knew that I didn't know what it was going to look like, but I knew that I was going to be, I knew that performance was the thing that matters most to me, the only thing I ever wanted to do. And now as I've become an entrepreneur, the only thing that is even better than that is to be the person who makes concerts happen that I can then play. So I'm an entrepreneur. I can make concerts happen. I can bring music to other people through the lens of Music Kitchen, of course. But I think the only reason now that I wear multiple hats is because I like creating. I like the creative process. And for me, that expands beyond actually playing the concerts to making the concerts. So I think that's, yeah, it's not a backup plan or it's an expanded mindset of what it means to be a performing artist, to create the new pathways through which that is even possible.
Just we have a comment in the chat from Tash. Um, I'm really enjoying hearing you all talk about your journeys as artists and appreciate all your advice. Smiley face. Thank you. Thank you, Tash. And Ashleigh, you've talked a lot about curation and programming as a creative pursuit, being able to envision something multifaceted and make that come to life.
Yeah, and I think it's echoed really with what Kelly had just shared, in the sense that taking something literally that is only in your head, and you either through narrative, through stories, would have to share that with someone visually, through paper, or through sonically, right, through music or movement. But in any case, it literally lives in your head. So how do you birth that into the world? And that could be through curation, that could be through entrepreneurial projects, that could be through an app, that could be through a concert, that could be through many different ways. But the getting over the fear of bringing what is in your head and all the complexities out into the world, getting over that fear is so liberating. And literally no end in sight with the extent of possibilities that could be realized if you really walk and own into that space.
And, I'd like to say, be brave. Believe in yourself and be brave. Because there's no wrong answer. You just might pivot a lot. And you may have one idea, and then another day it might change and morph into something different or better or richer. It really is, it's an amazing thing. I think that creatives, people who have this desire to emote and to express themselves, you can't be held back. But you need to have a certain kind of confidence to do that. And when you have that confidence and believe that no one is going to be judging you because they don't have the right to judge you, this is who you are if you are authentic and how you believe in that. So believe in yourself. That's really important. And be free and be open-minded. So with my Heritage and Harmony Silver Linings, that started off, with just a very simple idea of recording 4 pieces that I love very much that helped me through the pandemic. And then the other day I went to my first in-person dance concert, and I saw the beautiful movements of the body, the human body, telling stories. I just love stories. I think stories in every shape, way, or form are just magical. And I started thinking, I want to create something with that spirit, with movement. And so I'm thrilled that I'm going to be partnering with the Ariel Rivka Dance Company, and they are going to bring Heritage and Harmony Silver Linings to life through movement and tell my story there. So, I thought about it and I said, should I talk about it? Should I, just do it. And if it works, how fantastic. And if it doesn't, you just keep trying. You can't give up.
And the other thing that I meant to mention before is that I have some friends from school who I remember put outer limits. None of us knows what's ahead. None of us can ever know for sure. You have to believe in something, have passion about it, and go for it. None of us knows what's in the future. And we have to be humble enough to know that it's something like a pandemic can happen. But I have friends in school who put a time limit. And they said, if I don't get an orchestra job by XYZ in 1 year, or in 2 years, or in 5 years, or at the end of this year, or next month, or whatever, then I'm done. And I don't believe in putting deadlines. Your passion and your life, the reason you're breathing and excited to take the next one and excited to wake up the next day, that shouldn't have a time limit on it. If we fail miserably at something, then yeah, I think as Donna and Ashleigh both said, you have to pick yourself up and go on to the next thing. And trust me, I've had such disappointing failures of things, that didn't work out the way I had hoped. And in ways that turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Like, I don't know how many of you were on some of the panel where I spoke on entrepreneurship and career, but when I was headed towards an orchestra, and everybody thought, after I was runner up at the New York Philharmonic, everybody thought that I was going to get the New York Philharmonic job, and that didn't happen after a couple of great auditions. But one audition I did for a major orchestra in 3 rounds, totally behind a screen, I won the audition. And then at the end of that process, they decided they didn't want to hire me. The music director was not interested in hiring me, to quote what I was told exactly. It was devastating. I think I even manifested a playing injury after after going through that, because it just totally rocked my world. But I really believe I'm in the place now that I'm supposed to be. That was not supposed to be my path, but had it been my path, I would have made a different path. I would have, I might have gotten to a different place, or to the same place a different way. Who knows? But I think that you never put a time limit on what it is that you believe in, and that you just really have to go for it. Um, and that includes how you how you make an impact in the world somehow. Like, you're going to see through your lens, through your perspective, you're going to see something nobody else sees. And don't be discouraged by that. It's in your head, like Ashleigh said, it's in your head. You bring it into the world, and that's why you're here.
And one of the things that I think is a thread that's going through everything that we're talking about, and something that I think about a lot, Kelly, and it's great that you share that it's not a straight path, and Ash, what you were talking about Highway 1 and all of the different things, is that over these 4 weeks we're hearing people's stories kind of told through the rearview mirror, and we, Kelly, it makes perfect sense that you're doing what you're doing, and Ashleigh and Donna too. We see clearly how you've arrived at doing the projects that you're doing, and it just makes total sense. And if we saw it in real time, the other way around, like you experienced it, there's a lot of setbacks, and there's a lot of things that don't make sense, and a lot of disappointments and resilience, and then we see how that gets put together. And of course, it's going to lead you to where you are. And I just think it's, we just want to keep that in mind as we hear all these amazing stories, that they don't happen backwards. They happen in real time, where I don't think any of us have ended up where we thought we were going to be, but we wouldn't trade it for anything. If I'm hearing sort of what you're all saying.
Sure. And when I started Music Kitchen, I was, there was no space for that in the world. And when I was looking for funders, there were so many funders that were saying, "Oh, well, these people need to get a job. You don't need to entertain them." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, you're so fundamentally missing the point. The arts are part of our humanity. Your financial status shouldn't really factor in to that equation." But that's when I started Music Kitchen. Nobody was really this cultural moment that we're in lately. This was not the cultural moment that I founded Music Kitchen. I pioneered the space for that kind of discussion. But it was crazy. I remember when we have Steinway as a partner, and they have donated a piano so that we can bring in Emmanuel Axe. But I remember those early conversations when I said, you want us to bring a piano where? To a homeless shelter. And Manny Axe will be there? Yes. Next conversation. You want us to bring a piano where? But they've been amazing. But I just think that your idea will have to sometimes create space where, it may change paradigms, and in the best ways. But don't be discouraged by that, because if you have it and you see it so clearly, and you start bringing it into the world, others will start to see it too.
Anush says, striking too deep of a chord right now. I think he's probably speaking for quite a few of us.
Well, I think that the fact that you are here speaks volumes because you are curious, you are interested, and that you have this motivation and drive to want to know and learn more. So, I applaud all of you again for your persistence and your interest, and I think that truly the world is your oyster.
I would love to encourage one last sort of wrap up thought that we all touched on, which is collaboration. So none of us, even though you see individual people in these Zoom boxes, did this alone. So it wasn't, it's Music Kitchen, Kelly Hall-Tompkins, Steinway artist, this venue, and the Donna with this collaborator, this person, and and same with myself, co-founder, and 70 other artists across disciplines and venues and spaces and funders, etc. It takes a village, quite literally. And while you may be a shy village, tonight at least, your village is here. Your fellow fellows, your fellow classmates, your mentors, everyone who has spoken, whether or not you have the first time that you've met them, or it's the millionth time that you've met them, but everyone that you've engaged with and will engage with over the next few weeks is now part of your circle. And so lean on that and help foster and develop that, because you literally never know when you'll need to activate, sort of sprinkle some magic water and grow that part of your connection. So keep those thoughts germinating and make sure to share them with your fellows.
Networking gets sometimes kind of a bad rap and makes me feel like I want to take a shower, but what it really is finding people like all of you who are at the same place with the same intentions and have the same experiences to share and to create and make things together. I think one of my proudest moments at the festival is when ensembles form at the festival, or partnerships form, or somebody started another summer festival through the festival. As you saw on Tuesday night, our 3 founders founded their own organizations. Megan says, yes, thank you for these conversations. It's so helpful to feel less alone in pursuing this work.
I don't know why, just tagging on what Peter said, I don't know why networking sometimes becomes a bad word, but it really should be so organic. To me, there's just nothing more beautiful than when 2 human beings recognize in each other some piece of something that they want to do in life, and that they're like, oh my gosh, if we put your piece and my piece and our heads together in this space, you love that thing, I love that thing, then there's this special bond between you. It may not realize into the world today. It might realize next week, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, or whatever, but there's this magical bond that you share with someone, this connection, because you discover something between you. It doesn't just work with romance, it works with creative outlet, and that to me is the beauty and the magic of networking. It is just very simply the creativity of creating, of discovering common passions and interests, and perhaps where your particular strengths, I don't want to say end, I would just say find a complementary connection to somebody else's particular strengths and or passions and or fill in the blank. And it's this amazing, beautiful thing. So I try not to think of networking as a bad word. It should always come from a genuine place. Of course, you have to do things sometimes. You have to make cold calls, and that's okay. Sometimes, everybody's so busy. It's true. They may not get back to you the first time, not because they don't want to, but maybe they missed the email or the call or whatever with lots of things going on. But they really want to know what it is that you might connect with. Cold calls are okay. But even better is when you make an honest, genuine connection with someone. Go hear their thing, go to their play, go hear their performance, read their dissertation, compliment them. That's another one of the great things about social media, is be part of of people's lives and their life journey, not just when you want to get hired for a concert, but when they have a baby, or when they post a cute cat photo, or when they, whatever, and when they have a birthday, or when they have terrible loss. Um, Networking is about all of that, and sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming on social media because every time you sign on for 5 seconds, you see somebody suffered their worst tragedy, somebody has gotten their biggest advancement, and it's like up down up down. It's like kind of a lot, but networking is just the organic process of making true and genuine connections with people, and that's it, and that's a beautiful thing.
Madeline says, hearing from you all has been so inspirational and encouraging. Well, I'll be thinking about this presentation for a long time, I think, and drawing lessons from it. So I just wanted to thank all three of you and all the fellows for joining this. I just knew by putting you all together and all of your particular journeys and amazing achievements that we would just have so much to think about going forward, and so many different ways of putting together a path. And so I'm just really grateful to all three of you and wanted to say thanks. And I'm sure, knowing all of you, that if any of our fellows have questions for you, that you'd be happy to connect with them. If any of you have questions, just let me know and I'll pass them on. And so thanks for all of this.